So we'll record this session so that we'll have this valuable knowledge for students to look at in the future. But I work in business career services where I help students with resumes and interviewing, but also I help you find jobs and connect to awesome employers like the ones who are here today. And I'm going to let Gracie, our Zoom co-pilot, introduce herself as well. Go ahead, Gracie.
Hey, I'm Gracie and I'm a Walker Fellow, so I'll be working as the Zoom co-pilot for this session, and I'm a senior here at App.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Gracie. So let me show you our next slide. These are awesome employers who are going to introduce themselves in just a minute. But before they do, let me outline for you how we're going to structure this workshop. Basically, we'll have about 25 minutes for me to ask our wonderful employers a few questions. And then we're going to have a Q&A session so you students can ask those burning questions, which I know you have. And so I encourage you to put your questions in the chat box. Gracie will be monitoring that, and when it's time to switch over to the Q&A, she will ask your questions in order, and we will try to get to all of them if we have time. So I believe that's all that I needed to tell you for us to get started. And so I'm going to ask our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves. And if you don't mind starting in order of the slide, Amber, could you go first?
Absolutely. So my name is Amber Lawrence. I am the Campus Relations Manager at the Select Group. For those of you who might not know, the Select Group is a technical services firm. We're headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have 15 locations nationwide, and we are within this kind of staffing umbrella. So we help connect IT and engineering professionals to companies that are hiring for them. So we do a lot of relationship building, selling, things of that nature. But I'm excited to be here with you guys today. My role is helping build relationships on university campuses with our A-list schools, coming and meeting awesome students like yourselves and helping with development for career development. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Amber. Annie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Borders. I'm the recruiter for Sherwin-Williams. We are the largest paints and coatings company in the world with close to $16 billion in sales and over 4,000 stores worldwide. Today, I'm here focusing on our management and sales training program. We're hiring now for December grads, May grads, as well as internships available. But we do also have other early talent programs as it relates to IT and operations and finance, and I can definitely help you find those opportunities as well.
Wonderful. And Mark.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, good morning. It's good to see everybody. Mark Crabb, National General Insurance in Winston-Salem. We are a top 20 insurer in the country. In Winston-Salem here, I'm the Vice President of the Mid-Atlantic Division. We handle auto claims where people get into auto accidents. I've been here 32 years. I hire a ton of App State grads. Actually, I just had 12 trainees come through the training class, and 7 of the 12 were Mountaineers. So I love my Mountaineers. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys today. A claim rep is the one who takes detailed recorded statements. You look at photos of the damages of the cars to help line up points of impact. You look at Google Maps at the accident scene to help guide your questioning. And really, you're the one who puts all these pieces of the puzzle together to determine what really happened and who was at fault. And if it's our insured at fault, how much do we owe for damage to the other car, or rental while it's being repaired, medical bills, pain and suffering, those type of things. So it's a lot of investigation, a lot of decision making, and a lot of customer service. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ashley.
Hey, I'm Ashley Scarborough. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager at EPES Transport. We are the largest truckload carrier in North Carolina. We have anything from driver positions to non-driver positions. I am looking for a specific position, our Career Path Trainee program. It's for recent grads that are looking to get into the transportation industry. We have a program, it's very similar to an internship, but it's a full-time position where you sit for 10 to 12 weeks with everyone in the company to kind of get an idea, and then you kind of transition into your full-time role after that.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go ahead and transition to questions. And you can order them or answer them in any order that you choose. Just jump right in. But my first question is, Does your company rely on virtual interviewing as part of this screening process? And if so, what platform do you use or platforms?
Currently, yes. Unfortunately, because I really miss the in-person interviews and I can't wait to get back to it. I hate this is not in person. Typically, these panel discussions are in person, and I love being there and seeing you guys. But hey, we're doing what we have to do for now, but hopefully very soon we'll get back towards normal. But yes, I do a lot of Zoom interviewing right now, and I've had pretty good success with it. It's not as good as in person. It does make it a little more challenging for you as a student to try to make that connection, since you're not, you know, handshaking and that in-person smile and stuff. It's different, but it's doable. But yes, we're using Zoom.
What about the rest of you?
We're also doing virtual interviews at the moment. We use a couple different platforms, but for the most part, we're using Microsoft Teams. That's what we use as a company to connect with each other. And it's been pretty user-friendly. So, and you can use Teams on your phone or on your computer. So I've had students using both, which is helpful. But like Mark said, we want to get back to in-person interviews as soon as possible. But for the moment, we are using Teams.
Wonderful.
We're doing the same. We've used Zoom and Teams. We actually have candidates coming on site now too. We're just requiring them to wear a mask and everything. So.
And Ashley, do you typically interview them virtually first before they come on site?
So we normally do a phone screen. I do a phone screen on the HR side, and then we have the hiring manager do one, and then we narrow the candidates down from there. Specifically for the career path, we will have them come in, and it's because it's a panel interview, but we have large enough conference rooms where we can actually separate everyone enough to kind of have those done.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we're pretty similar, I think, as everyone right now, right? Relying a lot on virtual, but we've always had a little bit of a virtual concept to our interview process. In person is always ideal, but we kind of have a 3-layer interview within the select group, starting with the phone screen, similar to what Ashley was mentioning. But if you're not close to one of our talent acquisition members near a site, then we will FaceTime, use WebEx. We also use Microsoft Teams internally. So we make sure, you know, whatever's easiest, we'll connect with you there before getting you on site with our hiring managers. Right now, of course, that last on-site interview is virtual. I think it's definitely difficult for us and for you guys. It's so much harder, especially hiring for a lot of in-person sales positions where connecting is so important, and building that relationship and making that, you know, initial, like, hello, right? How you're saying, Mark, the handshake, like all of that is just so different now virtually, not able to do that. But we're making it work. I think, like everybody, right?
Wonderful. So on that note, Amber, what advice do you have for students on how they should prepare for a virtual interview and how that might be different from how they prep for an in-person interview?
Yeah, I think, you know, making sure you understand the platform you're using. As you can see, as we all mentioned, you know, there's a lot of ones out there. All of them are different. The biggest thing I've seen that I've struggled with Microsoft Teams on your phone, you may think that you see your whole face, but the person on the other end sees like this much of it. And you have no idea unless someone tells you. So I always suggest like practice logging in, making sure that you can connect, internet connection, right? I mean, sometimes that's out of our control, but making sure that you're somewhere where that is more reliable and you have a strong connection, you can hear, you know, your speakers work, your microphone work. Those are all things that you're not necessarily preparing for when you're going in person, right? But making sure that that all works, and also being aware of just kind of what's behind you. I think we're all just doing the best we can right now. We're all in, you know, a lot of us are in our homes and just making it work. But I think being mindful of what you have going around you too is a good thing to prep for.
Great. And what do the rest of you think?
That's a great point, Amber. I had an interview yesterday on Teams, and when I hopped on, she was already on there, and it was like this close to her face. I was like, whoa, what is happening? So I asked her, I was like, are you using your phone today? And she said, yeah. And so I told her, I was like, you can back up a little bit if you'd like to. Like, it's super zoomed in on my side. So that's great advice to practice with the platform. And use a computer if possible, I guess, because the phone like super zooms in on your face. But also just being aware of your surroundings. I was on a panel last week, I guess it was with Veronica, about the virtual career fairs, and it's very similar of make sure you have a clean background. If you're in your bedroom, make sure you've made your bed, because that just shows that you went the extra step to prepare for the interview. And also, same thing as an in-person interview, make sure you're logged on and sitting on that call ready to go a couple minutes early. So as soon as we hop on, we can get the conversation started. We're not like trying to figure out any tech issues that first couple of minutes, because for me, I do like a quick 30-minute screen. And normally if I'm doing those during the day, it's back to back to back. So I don't really have time to like work out the kinks the first 10 minutes. That's going to cut your interview short 20. So just make sure you're still there ahead of time, and that you look nice, but also behind you looks nice as well.
Other advice for students?
Amber and
definitely
Annie
agree.
hit it. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, I definitely agree. I've had some interviews recently that, I mean, I've had people not dressing appropriately, and all kinds of stuff. And you treat it as if you were going to be going on site in person and aware of your surroundings for sure.
Yeah, the ladies covered it pretty well. I have noticed that a laptop or an external webcam is much better than a cell phone. If you do have to use a cell phone, don't try to hold it during the interview, and because you really get some funny angles and headshots with that. Set it up on your desk and prop it up and get it situated and leave it alone. And of course, like others said, be mindful of your background noise as well. And always be very careful that when you think it's over, make sure it's over before you do or say anything that you regret. We've had a few bloopers.
Well, and that leads me to my next question. One, I was going to ask you to elaborate a little bit more on dress, any of you. You sort of mentioned that, but obviously professional dress and what you prefer. But how about what not to do, or maybe some things you've seen that you would rather not see in a virtual interview setting? Mark, you want to take that first?
Sure, and a lot of this it's already been mentioned, but with people being at home, you have to be mindful of dogs and cats and family members. Shut doors. Not that it just kills the interview, but I had just assumed not see a cat jump up on the desk in front of you. Again, it doesn't kill it for me, but it shows me how well prepared either you are or are not. But yeah, just several things to think about when you've got the camera going at home.
Mark, my dog better not bark. That's all I can say.
It's okay if it does.
Any thoughts from the rest of you, like what not to do, or any more elaboration on dress?
I think I would agree on the dressing thing. Like I said, I've had a few issues recently. We do hire for non-driver positions, so we hire for stuff in the office, but we also hire for diesel mechanics and technicians and stuff. So mindful of how you're dressing. I did have a lot of people here recently letting dogs in and out of the door right behind them while we're talking. I know it's really hard with everybody being home, but kids being around. I had one lady that had a screaming child and I couldn't hear half the stuff she was saying. So I ended up having to end that and just doing a phone call and then setting something up for a later date.
Yeah, I think another thing to be mindful of too outside of that is just like distractions on your end. When you're on your laptop, if you have your email up, or you have, for me, we have Microsoft Teams, so where we can actually chat amongst employees. It's super distracting if I'm trying to engage here, but I see another message pop up, right? My eyes kind of darting to it. And you have to be mindful when you're on a video interview, it's just here. So it's a lot more noticeable when you're moving or when your eyes are distracted. So I would suggest just exiting out of the other things for the interview, just like you wouldn't bring your cell phone into an in-person interview. It's kind of the same thing, but a little bit more tempting because it's all right there for you. going to definitely echo with dress. I think dress professionally. I think right now, you know, we're all just doing the best that we can. Some people don't always have access to the same professional dress as everyone else. I know a lot of universities have closets on campus that have been really helpful in the past for career fairs and whatnot. So do the best you can. I think, you know, brush your hair, right? Just prepare, like get a nice shirt on, whatever you can do. I know we're all tempted to probably wear the sweatpants or the leggings underneath. I think, you know, sometimes when you get dressed up or, you know, you get in more of that formal wear, you kind of get in that same headspace. So I would definitely suggest the full, just as a, you know, pump up for yourself, get in that attitude of, all right, this is an interview. And also if you stand up, sometimes that's awkward because you never know, maybe you drop your pen, right? It sounds kind of funny, but like, it happens when you have like pajama pants, it's awkward, right? So I would say just fully get in interview mode, even though we're home, you know, do the best that you can to do just exactly like you would in person, just over a video, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one other thing real quick, we've talked about the background, but specifically in the background, make sure you don't have anything political or things that some may find you know, in poor taste. I've only had that happen a couple times because you never know who you're interviewing with and what their biases may be. So you want to be successful regardless of who you're interviewing and what their opinions are. So just be mindful of that. You know, it could be as simple as a hat hanging on top of a bookshelf or something back behind you, and they may read something into that. So just be careful and mindful of it.
Anybody got anything else to add to that, or have we covered it?
I would say, I mean, what everybody else said was fantastic, but just remember not to slack any just because it's a video interview. I actually had a friend of mine that was interviewing reach out and say, should I put on this jacket? I mean, it's just a video. And I was like, yes, put on the suit jacket. If that's what you would have worn in person and you have it available, put it on because it shows that you went the extra step. And we try to treat these as much as we can as they're in person. So if you would have worn the jacket in person, wear it on video too.
And we give students that same advice for a phone interview, even if no one sees you. It helps your confidence. If you're in a suit, you're ready, you've got your notes spread out. And that leads me to a quick question. But before I ask it, I've only got a couple more for you and we'll segue to the Q&A. Students, if you will go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. I don't see any right now, but that's going to be your chance to get some more inside information from these employers. So if you'll please do that while we wrap up our last couple of questions and begin the Q&A session, that would be very helpful. So how do you feel about students looking down at their notes when they're doing a virtual interview with you? Is that off-putting or is that okay?
Well,
I actually just recently, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ashley.
I recently just had that, and I don't know that I liked it in person, but on a video interview, I don't know that it was. I actually enjoyed the fact that they were taking notes and asking questions, and looking down at some things that they had already prepared specifically for the company and questions specifically for me and everything like that. So I don't know that I've ever liked it in person, but I do like it during Zoom calls. It just shows that they're prepared.
Yeah, what I was going to say is typically the only time I see somebody looking down is if they have prepared 2 or 3 questions for the employer, and I don't mind them referring to that. Now, other than that, I don't want them staring down. I mean, I really don't know what they'd be staring at because they don't know what questions I'm going to ask. So, but yeah, that's typically the only time I see students look down is when they're asking the questions that they pre-planned to ask that particular employer, which is fine.
Yeah, I love when people have questions prepared for me that are like super thought out. They did their homework. They've looked at my LinkedIn, right, when they're trying to make a connection to me and really ask thoughtful questions about the role and what they'd be doing. For me, that shows that they're serious, they're excited, that they're really looking at this opportunity as long-term. I also love when people take notes on what I'm saying. Like if I am explaining the role, especially being in a sales and high performance environment where there's metrics and I'm telling you about those and what you can expect and I want you to have the full picture when you're coming into the select group, like no surprises, right? I want you to know exactly what you're getting. So if you're taking notes, again, that's showing the interest, that's showing that you're excited about it, that you're taking it seriously. So I love that in person. I love that on video. I think where you might get a little bit hurt by that is if you're like looking at the website, trying to pretend that you know things, but you don't, or something like that, right? Like that feels weird. It feels unauthentic, doesn't feel genuine. That's definitely what you always want to be in an interview. So I think if you're using it for questions or things that you wrote down that you really liked about the company, you want to make sure you mention, or if you're taking notes on what I'm saying, it's totally fine.
Yeah, I always start off the interview also by telling the candidates I'll be taking notes on what they're saying, and they're more than welcome to also take notes on what we talk about, because maybe they have a quick question while I'm in the middle of the thought and they don't want to interrupt and they don't want to forget it, so they can write it down. So I think that's okay. I mean, just as if you were in person, make sure you're still focused on eye contact and actually looking at the camera. But if you need to look down every once in a while or look over to the side because you took some notes or wrote down some questions, I think that's perfectly fine. But kind of like Amber said, don't try to fake it and be like Googling on the side in the middle of the conversation, because we'll probably be able to tell that you're not being genuine and you're kind of trying to wing it.
Great. So my last question for you before we segue to the Q&A, and I see a couple questions in that chat, but I would love to see a few more. So again, students, I encourage you to get your questions there, but none of us can predict the future. I wish that I could, but what do you foresee in terms of interviewing in the future? Do you foresee your company using virtual platforms more frequently, either because of the pandemic situation or because it's become really convenient and kind of the new normal? What are your thoughts on the future of virtual interviewing?
I think it's definitely not going anywhere in some way, shape, or form, right? I think, for us, once we're safely able to be interviewing in person again, that's always going to be our first option. We would love to meet people in person. We would love to be able to have that in-person opportunity to connect. But I think the reality is like that virtual piece is not going anywhere for a little while. Especially, at the select group, we still utilized it, and at least in our first couple of phases of the interview process, to make sure that we were still at least being able to see people in person and talk with them on the talent acquisition side before we got them to the hiring managers. So I think that you're definitely going to see it more and more. I would definitely be practicing these types of skills and, taking these tips and making note of them, because I feel like you'll probably be using them a little bit more as people are going more virtual and having more flexibility and remote opportunity moving forward.
I would agree. I think that we will probably start utilizing it more so a little earlier on in the process, and then bringing those 2 or 3 finalists candidate-wise on site. It's actually been really good for us when we weren't using it before. But with the COVID-19 thing, it's helped a lot gauge just interest in the company and the candidates, willingness to, like, for the job position, everything. We do assessments for a lot of our candidates early on as well. So it just helps add an extra step for us so that we can kind of review those results too.
It's been a great tool. I'm glad we had it with the pandemic. But I can't wait to get back to the in-person interviews. I mean, historically, I would call somebody, do a short phone screen. If I liked what I heard, I would invite them in for an in-person interview and a sit with. We incorporate sitting with a claim rep for about 45 minutes to where you get a good job preview and you actually get to speak with. Typically, I would put you with an App State grad, and you can hear about their transition from school to the job and the career opportunities here and the training. So as soon as we get back to that, I probably will not be using Zoom. Well, I know I won't be using it like I do now, but unless it's a, out of state situation or something.
Yeah, I would say we'll continue to use it for our early interviews, so maybe that first or second round. But currently our stores are open. So kind of like Mark was saying, we do have a shadow portion of our interview process where the candidates are going into the stores, because for the management and sales training program, you're learning how to be a manager of a store. So it's important that you've actually been into a Sherwin-Williams and see what we sell and how we interact with customers. So that will continue to be in person. And I think the district managers would really like that final round interview with the last couple of candidates to also be in person eventually. But I think we'll continue to use it for those first couple of interviews.
So Annie, have you started back up the shadowing piece of the interview process?
Yes. Yeah, so we are sending candidates in the stores for their shadow. We're following all safety precautions. So they have to wear a mask. I send them like a whole guideline of what to do and what not to do whenever they're in the store. But yeah, it's just really important before, I mean,
I agree.
If I was a candidate, I wouldn't accept the job without seeing it first, especially if you've never been in a Sherwin-Williams, which a lot of college students probably haven't, unless you're, I don't know, painting your apartment or something. So I think it's really important to see.
That's good to hear. If you don't mind, I'll leverage that with my HR department to see if I can kick off, get my shadowing back in place.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Well, thank you all for answering those questions. I see we do have a couple from students, so I'm going to let Gracie go ahead and ask those questions and we'll see how far we get. And students, add more if you've got more.
Veronica, just a quick question. Is it okay if the students ask the questions themselves, or would you rather not take that path?
They could do that if they prefer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Isabella was first. So maybe Gracie, if you'll just call their names, they can ask the question. That would be great.
Okay, yeah, the first one was Isabella.
All right. Hey, everyone. So I was wondering, when doing an interview, is it better to look into the camera and speak to the recruiter, or to just look at the recruiter on the computer? Which one shows better eye contact?
Yeah, I've struggled with that one too. It's very difficult to get used to either looking at the camera or looking at the picture of who you're talking to. What I do is I try to move my picture close to my camera to where you can't really see the difference. But I don't know what the best is. I struggle with that myself.
I agree. I'm so the kind of person where I look at your face when you're talking. So I'm so guilty of always doing that, right? Like looking at the person, feeling like I'm talking to them just like I would in real life. So that's a great suggestion, Mark. Put that person's picture as close as you can to your camera. I have a coworker, she's great at, as you're talking, she'll look at you, but when she talks to you, she like looks at the camera, and I just still struggle with it. I can't. So I'm a little up in the air. I feel like if you're at least kind of focused in that general vicinity, your eyes aren't darting everywhere. It won't be very distracting either way.
I agree.
Yeah, Isabella, I can tell you it's never bothered me when somebody doesn't make a point to stare at the camera. It's never been an issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, next is Rihanna, if you want to ask yours.
Hi, good morning. I'm
Morning.
Hannah. I'm a senior management major. I was just wondering, what's something that an interviewee has specifically done within a virtual interview that has stood out to you or that you really liked or appreciated?
I'm a really big person on being prepared, knowing about the company so that when I give information, kind of reiterating that back to me, but on a different level, maybe a little bit more so again, like with your research. And just being prepared. I do have our position posted in Handshake. So just taking that extra step to see if we have a position posted and kind of looking at that, maybe having some questions about that specific position. Not knowing anything about a position even being posted or something like that is, I have to go through the whole thing. And with short one-on-ones right now that are 10 minutes long through Zoom or whatever platform the school's using, it's really hard to get everything out. And then in group sessions, you have a 30-minute kind of group discussion. And it's really hard, depending on how many attendees and people that RSVP'd are in there, it's really hard to get everything out for 30 minutes.
I think something that has really stood out to me is really, like Ashley was saying, showing up prepared, but in the sense that you're already logged on when I pop on to the interview. You're there, you're waiting, you have dressed professionally. You look very nice today, Rihanna. That you're just ready for this interview. You didn't just roll out of bed and be like, oh, good morning, Annie. I'm like, I've been up for hours. Like, I was prepared for this interview with you. And I just expect the same in return, that you're prepared. You've done your research on the role. You clearly read the job description. And then actually recently I had somebody at the end. I always ask, like, do you have any questions for me? And they had clearly taken notes and said, I would just like to reiterate the training program to make sure I have it all right. And he read back to me what he had written down. And there was a few discrepancies, so I was able to clear those up for him. So I thought that really stood out of like, okay, you were listening, you're actually genuinely interested in this program and want to make sure you have a clear understanding before moving on to the next role, because interviews are a two-way street. Sure, we're interviewing you, but we also know that you're doing a million other interviews, and most candidates have multiple offers in hand whenever we present those offers. So make sure that you're asking all of the questions that you want to know in those interviews as well.
And I would say just to add something to it that's not been mentioned, the poorest quality Zoom interviews I've had are when people do it from a cell phone in their car.
Yeah, definitely don't do it in your car. I've seen that too, Mark, and I'm like, just go somewhere where I'm not on a roller coaster, right? Like that. I don't love that. Definitely echoing everything everybody said. I think something that I always think of that stands out is kind of before and after the interview too. So somebody who takes initiative to reach out to learn more, who connects with me on LinkedIn and is like, hey, I've seen, either I'm on campus or I've seen a job posting through Handshake and saw you were the contact. I'm really interested and would love to hear more. Taking that initiative gets me excited. I'm like, awesome. Yes, I would love to talk to you, right? I definitely want to tell you more. And then following up after, thanking someone for their time. Seems silly, especially in virtual world. Like, okay, just a quick email. I just told you thank you on the video. It goes a long way. I think that definitely leaves a great lasting impression at the end, to just easily thank someone for their time, reiterate why you're interested, maybe why you feel like you would be a great candidate. Those are definitely just additional touches that you can bring that are pretty easy, don't take you a lot of time, but are going to help stand out in the recruiter or the hiring manager's mind.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
And Rihanna, did you have another question you wanted to ask?
I was just wondering if you guys find that more of the work is still being done virtually, as opposed to like transitioning towards more people coming into the brick and mortar building.
Our current class, the class I just mentioned a while ago, that was our first class back in-house with social distancing in the training room. The prior two classes were done virtually. It worked, but I'm not a fan because there's so much that you miss once you hit the floor as far as the learnings from people who sit around you, what you hear, and the little small discussions you have after telephone calls. So we are working our way back towards getting people into the office, but we're being very careful and slow about it. My primary focus is on getting trainees in here because they're the ones who need it the most.
We're a little different. So we're a transportation trucking company. So we've actually, majority of us have been in the building since everything started. We do have the virtual option working and everything, but I don't really think that it's been that big of a deal for us. We do have smaller training classes and stuff. So we've been able to practice the social distancing.
I think for us, we've been really fortunate that we were able to quickly switch remote. So the Select Group's been fully remote since March, and we have plans to be fully remote until at least 2021. And that's even fluid. We're going to kind of reevaluate and see what's happening there. It was a big switch for us, especially, our account managers, they are going face-to-face, building relationships with clients. But just safety being our first priority, we've switched fully to all client meetings and whatnot being virtual as well. So we're getting creative with it. We're having fun with it. We're doing virtual lunches. We send, a gift card to a client to buy lunch, and we eat lunch together on video. It sounds kind of silly, but it's what we have to do now, right? And I think that it's been a good switch. We're definitely gonna be excited. I know personally, I am a big extrovert. I get so much energy from being around other people. So I miss just kind of the, kitchen chats or water cooler chats, people call them, right? Just seeing people in the office. It's definitely been difficult, but in terms of productivity and getting things done, we haven't seen any drop in that. We've been able to really easily switch over and still get everything done that we need to.
Yeah, for us, it really depends on the role. So as I mentioned, our stores are open. So if you're working in the stores, you're in person. For me, I work actually in Atlanta at our district office, and we rotate who goes in on what days. So I work in the office on Mondays and Tuesdays. So the whole HR team is there, but then finance comes in on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and marketing comes in another day. So we rotate depending on where we sit in the office, and majority of us have our own offices. So we're able to like close the door so we're not all around each other. We can practice social distancing. So it really depends on what role you're in, what that looks like.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Sophia Kirby, if you want to ask yours.
Hi, I was just wondering, and Amber, you already touched on it a little bit, but since you're like doing a virtual interview, and you're already like obviously on your phone or computer, how like long should you be waiting to send the message? Like, should you do it within an hour, or should you still like wait a little bit? Like, what's the deal?
That's a great question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Are you talking kind of like after the interview, the follow-up that you're giving whoever interviewed you?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't maybe do it immediately. Maybe give yourself a minute to process what you learned in the interview, so you can maybe really show like what you liked about what you learned. And after you had a moment to kind of like think through all of that, sometimes more questions come up. I am notorious for I'll hop off a meeting and then an hour later be like, oh my gosh, I should have asked this, right? So maybe give yourself a moment to think through it. If you have an additional question, you can always pop that in there too. I've been thinking about it, just had one more question that came to mind, but I wouldn't wait too long, right? I would definitely probably do it that day. Like you said, we're all at our computers. I think the longer you do it, you'll more likely probably forget, but definitely interested to hear what the other panelists think too. That's a good question.
Yeah, if you're interested in a position and in a company, it is critical to let them know of your interest. I wouldn't wait until I get off the interview to send it, because now that's a nice plus when you send it a day later or something, but before you get through with the call, if this is something that's really caught your ear and your mind as far as, hey, I could see myself working here, make sure you communicate that to the interviewers. Let them sense your interest level. Because I love it when I get off a call and I'm thinking this person is really interested in becoming an employee here, which makes me even more interested in them. And then when I get that follow-up email later that day or the next day, that's just one more point.
I agree. I like the LinkedIn connection. And then I would say within like a day or maybe a little bit less, an email follow-up. But I'm always on LinkedIn on the talent acquisition side. So taking the time to connect with me on LinkedIn and then sending me a follow-up email is perfect. And I think before you get off the interview, I've had a lot of students ask, and a lot of people have not, but asking for my email address just to make sure that you have it correct, or that there's nothing, wrong in Handshake if you find it in there or something like that.
I think Mark makes a great point. If you're interested in a position, let us know. There's been a couple of times when I've gotten off maybe a video call or a phone call and been like, I don't know if they were feeling it. And maybe they were just trying to be super professional and not really show their emotions. And then I get an email maybe a couple hours later of, hey, I'm super interested in this role. I can't wait to move forward to the next step. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Like, I didn't get that vibe from you on the phone, but maybe it's worth another conversation now. Let's move up to the next step. So I guess that touches on two things. One, let us know when you're interested in a role. And on the other hand, it's okay to tell a recruiter if you're not interested. I actually had an interview right before this call today, and it lasted 10 minutes because once I explained the position and a few of our things that we needed from candidates, they basically said, oh, okay, that's not exactly what I'm looking for. And I really, really appreciated that because I got 20 minutes back of my day before I hopped on this call. So it's okay to also tell a recruiter, even if it's in the follow-up email, thank you so much for your time. After further thought, this isn't a role I'm looking for. I'll be in touch, or if I see other roles available, let's stay in contact. Something like that is okay if it's really not something you're interested in. So let us know either way. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Annie. I kind of want to just piggyback off that for a second, because I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't, right? If you're just saying you're interested in jobs or right, accepting one that in your gut, you're like, this is not where I'm going to be happy. This is not an environment that motivates me in the right way. It's doing a disservice to yourself and the company. So I will always be transparent with candidates. I'm telling you exactly what you're getting into, right? I'm telling you if you're going to be cold calling, I'm telling you what your metrics will be. They're all things that I'm not holding back. I want you to know exactly what you're getting into, because it's not for everyone, and that's totally okay, right? It's not good or bad. It just is. It's for some people and not for others. So being transparent on your side too, of like, hey, this is exciting. I'm interested. I want to keep moving forward. Or, you know what, thank you for letting me know, but this just isn't really what I'm looking for, is so nice. And I love hearing it. And I tell people when they tell me that, I appreciate your transparency. Tell me what you're interested in. And if we have opportunities in that realm, I'll let you know, right? Because we have other opportunities coming through all the time as well. So being open, genuine, and transparent in those types of environments are so important.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, our next question is from Bennett, if you want to ask yours.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, as a sophomore that's getting involved with all this new interviewing stuff, since you said that virtual interviewing is usually the initial part, what does the totality of your interviewing process look like?
Typically, again, pre-COVID, and what I prefer is, number one, if I see, if Veronica or many of my contacts there at App State, if they send me an App State resume, I try to call them the same day. And if I like what I hear on the phone, and after 10 minutes, I will invite you in for an interview and a sit with, and you could get a job offer same day, next day. Because I like to move quickly with that. And I know some, and there's other companies that do it differently. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a process that's set up. But yeah, again, if it's App State, especially if you're coming recommended by somebody like Veronica, I will get you in. I will call you same day, get you in ASAP, and make a decision immediately.
Yeah, our process is typically about a 3-step. We start with a phone call as well, unless I meet you on campus or at a virtual event, virtual career fair. Now, I guess we're not on campus, but that's kind of like your phone call, right? That initial meeting. What are you looking for? Is this something that might be exciting to you? Vice versa, right? Awesome. Let's go to the next one, where you're doing a video or in person, if able, interview with a talent acquisition member. I like to say, think of talent acquisition in our company. I don't want to speak for everyone. I know every company is different, but we're kind of your middleman between the hiring manager and you. So I like to understand what's your timeline? How quick do we need to be moving? Are you ready to make decisions? If so, cool, let's go for it. I'll set you up for a final step on site, or right now, video, right? Interview with the hiring manager. But I'm also there, like, I want us to communicate. Let's make sure it makes sense. If you're not ready to make a decision, I'm not putting you in front of a hiring manager, because if they give you an offer and you decline it because you're not ready, then I didn't do my job, right? I didn't ask you the right questions and make sure you were ready to be given that opportunity, because I want to set you up for success in that way. So the timeline can look different a little bit for some people. I love the sense of urgency always, but we definitely want to make sure we're having those conversations. But for the most part, it's 3 steps, either initial meeting on campus or phone, video with talent acquisition, and then hiring manager.
We're somewhat the same. So I do an initial phone, and then our senior director in HR that runs our career path program does a phone interview as well. And then we actually do the panel interview, and we're going to continue to do it that way just because it's crucial for us because we have a lot of executives that, help make those decisions too. And we want to make sure that we get the right candidate for us, but that it's the right candidate, it's right for the candidate as well.
Yeah, for us, it's an initial phone or video interview, just depends. And from there, doing a shadow actually in the store, which we call it a store visit, but I always reiterate to candidates, this is a part of the interview process. You're talking with a store manager, how you show up to that visit, how you interact, how you engage is a huge telltale sign. So that is a part of the interview process. And then finally, normally in person, but currently virtual interview with the district manager or the district manager and his interview team, his or her interview team, depending on if they have city managers, the size of the district really depends on that. But ours is normally a 3-step process also.
And Gracie, I know you've got to leave soon, but if you want to get the last question ready, and thank you for being here to help us.
Of course. The last question is from Sophia Kirby. Again, if you want to go ahead and ask yours.
Hi again. So I was just wondering, how can you still come across personable and warm, even though you're on camera? How can you not just sit there and be like, because I find myself doing that, just talking to my teacher, I'm and I just feel like a robot. So how can you look like you're engaged, but not, because you can't really see all your body language?
Well, I think you're doing a great job, Sophia. The way you're smiling and using your hand and nodding your head, it shows you're engaged. It shows you've got some personality. It shows you're really not too nervous. So little things like that.
Yeah, I think taking the time to still have a moment of that connection. I think sometimes now in video, I've known in my own interaction, sometimes we're just all right, get to the point, right? We have the meetings, we're all right, we all know why we've logged on here. Let's get to it. But I think that there's still so much value in creating that connection to someone you're talking to, just like you would in the beginning of an interview, right? A little small talk with the person as you're getting settled in the interview room or what have you. So not forgetting that piece too, really connecting in whatever makes sense and feels authentic for you, but taking the time to kind of really understand who your interviewer is, or having a question that's not just getting right into it. I think that's going to make you less nervous as well, because interviews are nerve-wracking, but that moment kind of okay, we're both human, right? We're having a conversation. I'm going to be professional, but maybe I'm not quite as nervous, and that'll make you come off more confident in your interview too.
I would agree. I think the hand motion, the smiling, the nodding, just making it, showing that you're interested and that you're understanding, and just interaction in general.
I think Amber made a good point too of we're all human. So let your personality show during these interviews, especially if you're going into sales or something like that. You want to show that you're personable and can build a relationship. I find myself very frequently telling really cheesy jokes because I think I'm funny. Some other people don't really, but I appreciate that during an interview. You want to stay professional, right? But if that's just a part of your personality to throw something like that in there, go for it. I just made an offer yesterday, and the district leadership team was like, this person was so genuine. That's why we're offering him. He was genuine about why he wanted the role, why he was leaving the role he was in, and was just really genuine the entire interview process. And that's really what stood out to them. So be yourself. Don't try to be too robotic. We're people too. So just remember that.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for the questions.
And thank you, students, for being here and asking those great questions. And employers, Amber, Annie, Mark, Ashley, you had great advice for students. I regret that we're not in person because we would give you a huge round of applause, but we appreciate so much that you donated your time and gave these students some inside information. So thank you for being a part of Walker Business Connections Career Week. We look forward to seeing you at the next workshop or at the fair on Friday. So students, if you have not signed up to meet with these employers, you need to do that now. Don't miss out on this opportunity. You get some one-on-one 10-minute interviews with these people to make a good impression. And now you got the insider information that you need to make a good impression. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See
Thank you.
ya at the fair.